2021 NZP GMP Refresher Training. In this session, we will be covering the following. What is GMP? GMP principles, NZP and GMP, GMP documents, GMP record keeping, quality events and deviations, and finally a summary, and there will be a quiz. What is GMP? GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practice. It is a term used to describe the systems manufacturers of medicines are required to have in place to ensure their products are consistently safe, effective, and of acceptable quality. GMP is concerned with all activities from delivery of raw materials to the release of the finished product, manufacturing and packaging processes, quality control, good management oversight, effective monitoring of processes. GMP is a legal requirement for those manufacturing medicinal and therapeutical products, as we do at NZP. There are 5 P's of good manufacturing practices: people, products, processes, procedures, and premises. People are required to have a good comprehension of their roles and responsibilities. This at NZP includes having position descriptions for everyone, SOPs, SPPs, and LPs. Products. All products, starting materials and finished products have specifications, and we also have in-process specifications so that we can make sure that along the way the manufactured product is compliant and fit for purpose. Processes. Properly documented, simple, and consistent. Procedures. Guidelines for undertaking critical processes. And premises should be clean, all equipment should be clean and calibrated as required. Principles of GMP. All guidelines follow a few basic principles. Manufacturing processes are clearly defined. Instructions and procedures are written in clear and unambiguous language. Operators are trained to carry out and document procedures. Changes that have an impact on the quality of the product are validated as necessary. Significant deviations are investigated and documented. Records are made manually or by instruments during manufacture that demonstrate that all steps required by the defined procedures and instructions were in fact taken. Records of manufacture, including distribution, that enable the complete history of the batch to be traced are retained in a comprehensible and accessible form. The distribution of the product minimises any risk to quality. A system is available for recalling any batch of product from sale or supply. Complaints about product are evaluated and the causes of quality defects are investigated, and appropriate measures are taken with respect to the defective product and to prevent reoccurrence. How GMP fits in at NZP. NZP works to the PITS PE 009 guidelines. PITS stands for the Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme. This is the guidance that MedSafe New Zealand audit NZP on and issue our licences and certificates to. Not all products at NZP are GMP products. Only the ones that are stated on the licences are GMP products. Notable exceptions are P&T and MBA. These, however, are covered under our responsibilities to MPI. Therefore, we manufacture all products at NZP to the same level. Regardless of the product, whether it's an API, a GMP, or a non-GMP product, NZP work to GMP across all areas of the business. Here's an example of some of our GMP certificates. We have different ones for different products. We have ones that are just for bile acids. We have one for ferritin products, MANAC, and we have a separate one for heparin. MedSafe also issue our license to manufacture medicines, which applies only to products named on the license. These are considered our active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. This is an extra level of risk due to the end use of products. As you'll see, it contains various things. Our colic API, our MANAC, and our TCA are currently our most high-level ones. 10 basic rules of GMP. Always ensure you have the correct written instructions before you start a particular task. Always adhere to written instructions and follow them exactly with no cutting corners. Always be vigilant for mistakes, errors, and bad practices. and report them to your supervisor immediately. Covering up bad behaviours could cost lives. Always make clear, accurate records of what has been done and the checks carried out all in real time. Always ensure that the correct materials are being used and also that they are green. Always ensure that the correct equipment is being used and that it is clean. You should be viewing the status cards on all pieces of the kit. Always take care to prevent contamination and mix-up. Always guard against labelling errors. Label control is vital. It shows the traceability right the way through the product. Always work accurately and precisely. Always keep things, including yourself, clean and tidy so as to avoid contamination. Some real-world impacts of non-GMP compliance. In 2007, there was an infant formula adulterated with melamine, which is known as the Chinese milk scandal. There was a significant food safety incident in China. The scandal involved milk and infant formula, along with other food materials components, being adulterated with melamine. Melamine was used to increase the nitrogen content of diluted milk, giving it the appearance of higher protein content in order to pass quality control testing. Of an estimated 294,000 victims, 50 babies died from kidney stones and other kidney damage, and an estimated 54,000 were hospitalised due to the contamination with melamine. In 2008, there was a heparin contamination, and it was contaminated with oversulfated chondroitin sulfate. Now, heparin is a product that is traded in the NZP and tested. Some 900 cases of adverse events were associated with the use of heparin, and these were reported to the FDA and the Federal Institute of Drugs and Medicinal Devices in Germany. Reports vary, but it's thought that between 100 to 200 patients died from the heparin contamination in the USA alone. Heparin sodium, as I said, is a traded product. NZP buy, test and supply to major global heparin manufacturers. Therefore, it is important we follow our procedures and along the way completely to see if we can identify any further contamination and avoid further contamination. GMP documentation. A large part of GMP is about documentation. Writing the instructions, SOPs, SOPs, LPs, following those instructions, making records. Documentation is not just about meeting regulations. There are some good practical reasons for it. To confirm what we have done and what we have performed task correctly. To enable effective investigations when things go wrong, e.g. out of specifications, quality events and deviations, customer complaints. To help us make informed decisions and provides a detailed history of the past and present. SOPs, Standard Operating Procedures. SOPs are a set of step-by-step instructions compiled by the organisation to help staff carry out routine operations. SOPs aim to achieve efficiency, quality output, and uniformity of performance, while reducing miscommunication and a failure to comply with industry regulations. It also helps us make product that is fit for purpose. Standard Production Procedures, SPPs, are the documentation that allows us to manufacture a batch of product. They detail the materials that are needed, the quantities that must be used, the equipment that must be used, the operations and checks that must be performed to manufacture the product. LPs, Laboratory Procedures. LPs are documentation that allows us to test starting materials and finished product to the required specification. They detail the chemicals that are needed to perform tests, the quantities that must be used, the equipment that must be used, how the test is carried out, and any calculations and checks that must be performed. GMP record keeping. At NZP, SOP 2.01003 is our GMP record keeping procedure. Rules about records in general. Records should be made in real time and not at the end of the process or shift. We understand there's some processes where they can't be filled out in real time, but in general, all documents should have their information filled out in real time, or as close to possible. Secondary checks should also be entered as things happen and when they have been seen to happen. Ensure records are legible. Populate all entry spaces on records, leave no blanks to avoid confusion if a step was omitted or recording was missed. If you make a mistake during data entry, cross out neatly so it can still be read, make corrections and initial and date. Corrections or comments for amendments on SPP and testing records. Amend the error by striking through with a single line so the original entry remains legible. Write the correct entry next to the error, sign and date the change. Provide a reason if it is not immediately obvious why the amendment was made. And as you see here, as part of our specification, we have 3 examples of how to incorrectly and correctly amend. Real-time recording. So the impact of not filling out records in real time. Here we have an example from vial testing within the lab. Now, the start was filled out and a lot of the weights and stuff were filled out, but the rest of the chemicals used were not filled out at the time. And this was not picked up until review after the test had taken place. The analyst did not fill out the reagents used at the time of testing. Therefore, a QE had to be raised by QC and assessed by QA. A deviation was required to assess if adequate information was available to deem the results were robust and valid, or if the entire HPLC run had to be repeated. The delay in testing of the vial impacted a number of departments, and this is how it impacts. The QA review of the record. This time was shortened, so other priorities were required to be shifted to accommodate an urgent review and release of the batch. QC status change labelling of drums. A technician was required to reorganise their testing of other products to allow for an urgent greening of the vial drums. Stores. The moving of drums to a two-sided vial yard and reselecting of drums for their next melter load was reordered due to the vial now being available. Production had to reschedule vial as to accommodate the vial not be released on time. And potentially supply chain had the impact that the final product was not delivered to the customer on time due to the delay in the testing of the initial vial. So as you can see, a number, if not all departments on site were impacted. QC, QA, stores, production and supply chain. Also potentially the end customer. All this could have been avoided if the record was completed in real time. This is not only a lab issue though. Failure to complete SPPs at the correct time can cause doubt as to if a process has been completed or not, causing confusion at changeover. This also makes investigations, when required, more difficult and time-consuming for all departments involved. Quality events and deviations. At NZP, SOP 4.09003. A quality event is an unplanned departure from the company's quality management procedures and systems. A deviation is an unplanned departure from the company's quality management procedures and systems, which also could impact on product quality or safety. If a departure is recognised, the immediate actions are: complete any actions that are immediately required to limit the impact of the event. For example, stopping the process, isolating equipment, correcting equipment settings, etc. Notify your area manager, supervisor, or team leader as soon as possible. Record the quality event without delay. Ideally, by the end of the day or shift, the quality event was identified. This is done through the QE log. Both QEs and deviations take up a significant amount of time in all departments on site. Therefore, the sooner we can get the information, the sooner we can assess whether we need to raise things to deviation or not, and therefore limit the impact on all departments. So, in summary, GMP is a responsibility of all staff on site, not just the quality department. GMP governs everything we do across site. Documentation errors are the most common errors seen. These affect all staff across the site as they are time consuming. More care when filling out paperwork and filling out in real time reduces these errors and time spent correcting them. Identifying and recording of quality events in a timely manner allows for quicker assessment of the impact and less delay in the release of product. So that is the end of the training session. As you see, the end is near. You next have to complete your questionnaire to complete the training for this year. Thank you.